Team South Africa is back in the country after a rather disappointing Olympic Games in Tokyo. Despite the low medal total, there are moments that many South Africans will never forget as a few shining lights put their names on the world map. Tatjana, Schoenmaker and Bianca Buitendag were the only athletes from South Africa to win medals at the Games, with Schoenmaker winning gold and silver in the 200-meter and 100-meter breaststroke. Buitendag was a silver medalist in surfing, which made its debut in Japan. As part of Women's Month, we reflect on struggles and successes of women in sports, and for that we welcome our specialist researcher for sports, arts and culture, Janet Witton. A very good morning and a pleasure to talk to you once again, Janet.
Good morning, nice to be back.
Happy Women's Month to you. But first gold medal for South Africa, female swimmer in 25 years. First world record for South African female swimmer in 22 years. Why has it taken so long?
You know, I think that it has a lot to do with money. It has a lot to do with media coverage. It has a lot to do with the battle that women's sport has, not only in South Africa, but all around the world. But I think that's exacerbated in countries that are not first world countries. If you look at countries like the US, like the UK, like some of the European countries, France, Germany, places like that, Australia in particular, there's an enormous amount of money put into those sports. And for a sport like swimming, that where the success is evenly balanced between men and women in those countries, that's what it's all about. It's about the backing that those sports have. And unfortunately, they don't have that in this country. We have a limited amount of money to go around, and it is not evenly spread between men and women.
South Africa regards itself to be passionate about sports, but are we doing enough to promote women's participation?
No, I don't think we are. I think we have a very long way to go. If you look at what are regarded as the big three sports in this country, we are talking about men's soccer, despite the fact that the women's soccer team is more successful at a national level. We're talking about men's cricket, despite the increasing success of the South African women's cricket team. And we are talking about men's rugby. And many people may not even know that we have a national 15s women's rugby team and a national 7s women's rugby team. I think there are a lot of people who don't even know that those teams exist. So no, I don't think that that we do enough as far as women's sport is concerned at all. We have slightly increased focus on netball, but you can't just look at netball and say, okay, now we're doing enough for women's sport. You have to look at the other sports that are involved, the other sports where women can become successful. Swimming and athletics are the obvious ones because they're the ones that get a profile every 4 years at the Olympics. But I think that you have to look at it, and you have to look at it all the way through to the development of these sports at a schools level. And I think there's a lot to be done in terms of development across the board with both men and women, boys and girls at a schools level. But I think the particular problem is with women's sport at school. If you look at most schools in this country, many of them do athletics. Some of them do something like swimming, but the focus is on netball and hockey, and there isn't much availability for women in any other sport. So unless you get somebody like Tatjana Schoenmaker, who has been taken under the wing by a coach, and whose parents have done an enormous amount to get her involved in swimming, like so many of the other swimmers. The swimming is one of the obvious sports where South Africa is successful, and not because of support from the federation or from the department. It's because of the people behind the athletes, the parents, the athletes' coaches, and sometimes the school that they're involved with, the clubs that they swim for. Those are the people who are responsible for people like Tatjana Schoenmaker. Bianca Buitendag is a perfect example. She has been at the top level of surfing for a long time. She's been a little bit quieter in the last few years. She's kind of slowed down towards the retirement that she announced just after she won that silver medal. But she was at the top level of South African surfing for a long time, of international surfing for a long time. And I think that until she participated in the Olympics, many South Africans had never heard of her.
Let's just talk about the significance of it being women who brought back the medal haul this time.
I think it's enormously significant because if you look at, let's take since 1992, because obviously those are the most recent Olympics that we've been involved in since our return to international sport. South Africa's won 38 medals in that time, and despite the lack of focus and the emphasis on male sport, 14 of those, so heading towards half of those medals, have been won by women. Penny Haynes, History Clutter, Caster Semenya, of course, and now Tatjana Schoenmaker, they've won the majority of those. And interestingly enough, two of the medals, only 2 of those 14 medals haven't been in athletics and swimming. And that's this year to Bianca Buitendag, of course, and then to Bridget Hartley in London, where she won a bronze medal in canoeing. So the focus is very much on those sports, on athletics and swimming. So I think that South Africa needs to put a lot more focus into all of those other sports. We've seen gymnasts, we've seen artistic swimmers, we've seen the water polo team, and I think that a lot more focus needs to be put on that. And interestingly enough, I say the fact that South Africa doesn't focus on women enough. An interesting and rather startling statistic in terms of international female sport. Water polo has been part of the Olympic Games since 1900. Women only started participating in 2000. So for 100 years, women were not participating in water polo at the Olympics. But since 2000, women have been participating. And this year, South Africa's water polo team had a female coach, the very first female coach ever of a team at the Olympics. Every women's team since 2000 has had a male coach, and I think that says a lot about the problem that women's sport faces all around the world.
How did you respond to that announcement yesterday that the medalists would not be receiving bonuses? What can be done outside of the formal structures to do some sort of fundraising process to ensure that they get what's due to them?
That statement has actually been contradicted, and we reported when Tatjana came back from the Olympics that SASCOC were working on it, and they've actually released a statement this morning contradicting those reports that they weren't going to be getting anything. SASCOC's statement this morning, with quoting President Barry Hendricks, says that they are negotiating with sponsors and their various financial backers at the moment. They haven't released numbers because they don't know how much money they're going to be able to distribute, and they also don't know how much they're going to need, how many medalists they're going to be altogether, because we've always given the same amount of money to the Olympians as we have to the Paralympians. And of course, the Paralympics only started in 2 weeks' time, so there will be South African medalists from the Paralympics as well that need to be put into the kitty to be awarded some kind of financial reward for the success that they've had. So SASCOC has denied that report, saying they've always said they say that they never said they weren't that the athletes weren't getting anything. They just don't know what that's going to be right now.